This is beautiful. What is that, velvet?
Peace and love is the key.
You are now about to experience the J&J-LifeMaat podcast with your host, Reya'Sekhmet.
But my name combines Raya, which means a connection to Ra. j-LifeMaat podcast. Please smash that like button. Peace and love is the key. Okay, my family. Abibi Fahodie, Abibi to me, Abibi Wan. I'm Reya'Sekhmet, also known as Reya'Seki. Thank you for tuning into the J&J-Life podcast, where truth is currency and confusion gets no airtime. And family, today isn't playtime. This is nation time. And we sit with another giant, not just a scholar, but a person who has walked through fire and came out carrying our truth. He's not just a truth teller, he's a truth keeper, a warrior, a master teacher, a family man, and a living institution. So family, this conversation is for warriors, for those ready to stand tall in their names with clarity and commitment. I speak for those erased, for the sons and daughters buried, for memory stolen, and for legacy interrupted. This is nation business, family. So without further ado, please welcome Baba and Mwalimu Baruti to the show. Abibi Fahodie, Baba, how are you doing on this fantastic day?
Bibi Fahodie, and I'm doing wonderful. This is the beginning of a brand new week, but I'm hoping that it'll continue like last week, because last week was incredible in the community, and I'm grateful. I'm appreciative of being on this program and with the work that you're doing. Yes. How old are you?
I'm 9 years old.
That's 9 is my favorite number. That's first. 9 is my absolute favorite number. Every year, increments of 9, something as good has happened in my life. So 18, 27. 27 was my best year. This is wonderful. This is wonderful. We got this warrior in training and Baba.
Abibi Fahodie, Baba.
Abibi Fahodie, doing serious work. People don't understand what it means to have, well, not only a young person, but also, I saw this before with, she did, I've seen beautiful teams with fathers with their daughters.
Absolutely.
That's really nice to see. So it's, I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. And we anticipate good health and well-being. How's the family?
Everybody is good. Everybody's good. The wife, she's back there doing her morning meditation. Her daughter and her husband are on some farmland about 150 miles from here in Georgia, and the 7 grandchildren are running free. You see so many children confined to small spaces. They need to run. They need to be free.
Ashe.
Shay, Baba, so how's it going for you today?
Well, Reya'Seki, and thank you for asking. And I just want to say to the family, as we always do, I want to give reverence to the ancestors and the elders for all they have done and are doing. And Baba Baruti, here, I just want to let you know, here on the J&J-LifeMaat podcast, we take our seat as students today, not just as casual listeners, but as students ready to receive, right, Reya'Seki?
Yes.
Yeah. So buckle up, family, as this conversation is not for the faint-hearted. It's for those who study, remember, and for those who build without apology. So I'm just saying, I'm ready to get into it. You want to grab you? Yeah.
Okay, so Baba Baruti, with you being the elder in the room, may I have permission to continue?
Absolutely.
Ashe. And Baba, I want to mention quickly that I first learned on the great work you and Mama Ya have been doing from my Baba Rasar and Nana Mu during my lessons at the Mu Institute. So I want to say dua to you, Baba, for bringing the information forward. And I pledge to continue the journey.
Madasi, we appreciate that.
Yeah. And
if I can say real quick, young folk who are doing this, like you're doing this, I don't think that you truly understand the value of what you're doing for, I'll say, older folks, for elders in training. Sometimes when we're doing this work, and I know we're having a conversation here, but sometimes when we're doing this work, we can become a little unhappy because a lot of things that we see aren't moving us along the path. Individuals, persons like you, make it worthwhile because the torch is getting passed. Your Bob is doing, I think, a beautiful job. And we need more of that, of course, also. But to see someone coming behind you who is carrying the message and is carrying it stronger than you are, it's a lot of motivation involved in that. So, Madasi P.
You want to just share a little bit with Baba on why you do what you do?
Yes.
Baba Ruti, I would like to say that my podcast is rooted on Blackness. My audience is a mix of children my age up to adults who are interested in spiritual, African-centered consciousness, and personal development. And anyone from around the diaspora looking to deepen their understanding of consciousness and self-awareness. I love learning, and I want to keep the information in real time.
Okay.
And I've come to know what my purpose is, and that is to bring forth the information with action.
Ashe.
Okay.
Ashe.
Ashe. Sounds like a plan.
And Baba, I just want to say that my divine reflection and I lead the Amu Institute for Ancestral Learning. It started as a concept before COVID and took root during the lockdown, but we kept it going ever since to give our kids and now our grandkids what the system won't, and that is the truth, the clarity, and the cultural memory and the tools to protect the village. So I just wanted to put a little bit more context behind what Reya'Sekhmet has so beautifully stated earlier.
Beautiful. Ashe.
So, Baba, there's many directions we can go in for our discussion today, but there's Akoben Institute. You've written and published over 30 books, and you did your graduate studies at the University of Chicago. So, given the fact that you were very accomplished, I believe that a great place to start will be the beginning. Will you share with the family your background, like where you were born or grew up, and lead us into how did you ultimately become the person you are today, and what made you want to do this work for our people?
Did you catch that, Baba? She was rambling it on.
Yes, I caught that. I'm trying to figure out how many hours do we have today to talk about, just that.
All in respect to your time, we have some questions we want to get through, hopefully.
Okay. Well, I'm a military brat, so all over. I was born on a base in Massachusetts, but I was only there for a week, so I don't know that. DC is my home. That's where I was raised. That's where I went to school. I'm not and this is always something that I introduce my students to in my classes very early on, because I didn't want them to get the wrong idea about who I was and what I was about. So I didn't come, if you will, through the traditional way. My compliment, Inia, she did. She came through elementary, middle, or junior high school, college, on through, doing what she needed to do. But I kind of didn't do that. I dropped out of school about the second month of the 7th grade. And then I had about a decade of silliness, about a decade of childishness, about a decade of stupidity, drugs, alcohol, all the rest of the stuff that went with that, I would say, at that time. Wow. I went into the military finally and began to settle down. I had a pretty wicked temper, and that got me into trouble. And in the military, they will punish you in interesting ways, so you can't attribute it to race. But I got sent after an incident with an officer. I got sent to Miami Air Force Base, which is in North Dakota. What I discovered there was a large collection of Black males who had done things to Europeans, and this is like the coldest place you could be. I could talk about this for hours, because your greatest fear was that you would die there from the cold. But it gave me a lot of time to think. And one of the things that I did was I wrote a lot of poetry. That's how I vented. I wrote a lot of poetry. And there was my supervisor was a white guy. Interestingly, he was an Appalachian white. Appalachian whites are the poorest whites in this country. And he had a great dislike for African people. So in a sense, he targeted me with large words that he knew that I didn't know what they meant. And this, of course, angered me. So this led me to pulling out the thesaurus, Webster's Collegiate, and I started taking classes at Montana State College, English classes. I was an English major originally, to fight that. When I came out, my situation was the same. Um, I decided to go to school. I decided to go back to school. The main reason for that, interestingly, the main reason for that was my brother and his wife were having a child. And when I found out, I looked in the mirror and I said, and I knew it was going to be a she. I looked in the mirror and I said, is this what I want my niece to see when she grows up? And I decided no. So I applied. I've been attending University of Maryland, Prince George Community College. I applied to every Black institution, historically Black HBCU in Alabama. I said the first one that accepts me, that's where I go. Alabama State accepted me. I moved down to Alabama to my parents' house, got rid of my cat, got rid of my, car, everything, and started going to school. This is when things really changed for me because I was the oldest student at Alabama State. I graduated college at 27. So I decided the only way for me to do this is to catch up. So I would go to sleep 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and I would sleep until midnight, and then I would study until it was time to go to class in the morning. I did that for over 30 years, trying to catch up until I realized I've caught up. In fact, I've gone beyond what I expected to do. I graduated #1 in my class at Alabama State, and I was still mainly under the influence of alcohol and drugs. When I walked across the stage at graduation, the security guard had to catch me as I'm falling off the step. So I was drunk at my graduation. That's how bad it had got. I received a full fellowship at the University of Chicago. And on the first day, the best thing about the University of Chicago was the first day I met NEI, the very first day. So, doing the studies, getting it done, started teaching at Chicago State, I guess about my 6th year there. And I discovered some wonderful students. Most of the students in the class were women who will be about the age of an aunt for me. And they wanted to learn. They wanted to know. So that started me pulling in quotes and proverbs from us. I would come into class every day, and the first thing I would do was put a quote or proverb on the board from us because they didn't know us. Most of us don't know us. Most of us don't know the words that we've said that our great thinkers have said. This turned into a habit that went on through after I left Morehouse, because of Akoben Institute, that would be the thing that I would do with the students. I started writing books because I was teaching chess at 5 different independent African, I'll say centered schools to supplement our income. We weren't getting enough. And I could talk about Morehouse in terms of leaving there, but that would really put a damper on things here. But it helped me. It was one of those lessons where when people try to hurt you, it can help you. So I ended up teaching at these schools, and one of them was really literally a poor working class student body in my chess classes. And I wanted them to get a book called, not Maurice Ashley, Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess. So that was the assignment. That was the first thing I needed them to do because it's a very useful chess learning tool. There were students in there whose parents really couldn't afford it. So I sat down, I wrote the chess primer, giving them an introduction to chess. That was the first book that I wrote. It's like every book that has been written was written because of some kind of a question or need in the community. The next book I wrote was Negroes and Other Essays. And the reason I wrote that, my last year at Morehouse, where I wasn't teaching any classes, but it was my last year at Morehouse, the president of the student body asked me to give a lecture at his inauguration. And I came in and gave a lecture on Negroes, those people who look like us, but they will betray us at every opportunity. And so I'm talking about Negroes. And at the end of the lecture, this young man came up and he said, what's a Negro? And it registered oh, he wasn't in any of my classes. So that led to the writing of the essays in Negroes and Other Essays, because I wanted them to understand or have it in their hands since I wasn't going to be there anymore. So all of these things begin to, I'll say all the things that were going on in the community, questions that I didn't think were answered adequately, led to the writing. And for those who write, a lot of the writing that you do is for the audience, it's for your readers, but it's also for you. Because if you're doing the writing right, then you grow, you learn. So I've learned a lot just doing the research for the writing. That's really, in a nutshell, that's been my life relative to us. Since I was a child, a little child, much younger than you, Reya'Sekhmet, I wanted to build a house from scratch. That was like my dream, outside of building a house for everybody on the planet while I was a child. Then I had 2 back surgeries over the years, and that put that dream, crushed it real quick. So we bought a house here in Atlanta, and I've been working on it for nearly 30 years now. And I've learned so much from having to take it's a 105-year-old house, taking an old house and rebuilding it. If I had to do this over again, I'd be a carpenter who read a lot and wrote. But the main lesson from this house has to do with me, because your life is personal. All the things in this house that were broken had to be fixed and rebuilt. When you end up doing it and you do it correctly, then it could be better than maybe it originally was. And I look at myself in terms of all the damage that I did to myself, and with all the work that I've done since then to try to rebuild that, which, interesting, that led to my book, Prayers of Gratitude, because I found so many warriors were so angry with themselves. They beat up on themselves so much because of the things that they did before they woke up. And you can't hold yourself accountable for what you did in ignorance. You got to look at what you're doing now in terms of trying to correct that. That's one of the reasons why Malcolm is my favorite hero. He's the most important one to me, because once he woke up, he spent the rest of his life working to make sure that no one was confused about what to do. He was to spend the rest of your life working for your people in that way. I can't think of a better way to live.
Ashe.
Ashe. For the family that may not know, will you talk a little bit more about the Akoben Institute? Like, do you offer online classes for kids my age, especially those who live in different states? And are there any specific requirements for enrollment?
There are no specific requirements. We don't want to know your school record. I'll start from the end, going back. We don't want to know your school record. We don't want to know how many fights you got into. All we want to know is, do you want to learn? That's my only question. That's my only question to incoming students. NEI is, technically, Akoben Institute is hers. I'll joke and I'll say, well, I'm just an employee. Most people associate Akoben Institute with me because most people know my name. They don't know her name as well. NEI grew up in a very poor part of Mississippi. When I went through that area for the first time, that's the first time that I saw, a black child running around, no shoes, third, fourth sibling hand-me-down dress. I had never seen that before. If folks know anything about the Delta in Mississippi, that's very close to there where she grew up. And her dream was, this was her motivation. She wanted to start a school for her nieces and nephews so that they would receive a correct education. That was her dream. And I didn't really have a dream, so that sounded good to me. So in a real sense, I followed her in the direction in terms of Akoben Institute. So it's her baby. And that sadly, some people, when they find that out, because she's a woman, I'll say, dislike some of the things of it. I remember a brother coming to me. He wanted his child to come to Akoben Institute, and I said, you need to talk to NEI because she's the administrator. And that was the end of the discussion for us. because he didn't want to deal with a woman. That's sad. Yes. So Akoben Institute began. Our daughter was attending a African-Centered school here that went through high school. But the year that she was getting ready to enter high school, they decided to discontinue their high school program because they didn't have enough high school students to, make it worthwhile. So that was my first year of having I had a full, my last 2 years at Morehouse, I had a full fellowship and I didn't have to teach any classes. I was paid my salary, all the rest of that. And that had to do with Negroes trying to remove me. But as I said, when people try to hurt you, sometimes they help you, because if they hadn't done that, Akoben Institute probably wouldn't be standing today because we wouldn't have been able to finance it.
Yeah.
So when that happened, our daughter, who was entering high school, we didn't really need to have a conversation. She wasn't going to public school. There were no private schools that we wanted her to attend. There were no, church schools, what have you. There was nothing out there. In fact, we had talked about it so much, we didn't even need to have a conversation. So since I was not having to teach there, I said, well, she can stay here with me and I can homeschool her, and NEI on the days that she was off, she could do the language arts with her and math. Next thing we know, her classmates who also were going to high school, their parents are calling and say, well, here's your teaching Aakhu'Ra at home. Can you, you take our children? That started Aakhu'Ra. It was supposed to wait until we had the right amount of money, the right amount of space, all the rest of that, even though we found this to be a better situation. The schools that are best for us, they're started in the basement, in the room in the back someplace. Those are the ones that last. Those are the most serious ones. So it became formalized, and technically, Akoben Institute isn't a school. The community, of course, knows that it's a school, but we didn't want to make it a school officially in terms of it being a business, because we didn't want any regulation from anybody, city of Atlanta, state of Georgia, United States, whatever. We wanted to be able to say what we wanted to say and not have to abide by their rules. And we've kept it that way. That's made it difficult, because that means that grants and other things that might be available were not available for us, because we weren't going to agree to you take whoever, and you can't discriminate here and discriminate there. Discrimination can be a good thing in the right hands if it's righteous.
Facts.
Yes.
So before we speak on sovereignty, we must confront the sickness.
Yes.
We call it Mentacide. We call it Mentacide. And family, I've come to know this through the teachings of Baba Rastafari and my Nana Amu. In those studying Baba Baruti's works in our Amu classes, Mentacide is the killing of the African mind. It's when the world teaches you to hate your own reflection. It's when you forget your name and your truth, as well as your balance. So I say all of that to ask you, Baba, will you please expound on my surface level explanation for the family who may not yet be clear on what Mentacide actually is?
Absolutely. And you are so lost. When you're a Mentacide, you don't see a history other than European history, or whoever else. You don't want to know anything about Africa. It's not just that you hate yourself, which is, of course, a small part of it, and you're thinking that you're loving yourself, and the reason why you're thinking that is because you don't know yourself. You actively work to move away from anything that is African. You don't want to hear anything about Africa. You don't want to deal with anything having to do with African people. It's like the difference between, well, that's another discussion, but you feel that influence is more important than power. Nana Amos Wilson made a very good point, even though, like my grandfather said, nothing new under the sun, because he wasn't the first person that said it. It was just the way that he said it. He said, if white folks disappeared today, we would be walking around wondering, well, what do we do? How do we live? How do we survive? Because we are so dependent on them and the way that they think. That's our aspiration, to become that. And the closer we are to that, the more that we are honored. We can look at that in terms of skin tone, discrimination within our community. We can look at it all kinds of ways, the ways that we have worked so hard to look like them, to be like them, to sleep with them. That's been our priority in life. We don't want to, most of us can name, European scholars, but we can't name African scholars. Most of us don't know Amos N. Wilson. Most of us don't know John Henry Clark. Most of us don't know Mama Marimba Ani. Never heard of it. Never heard of Mwalimu Baruti. So it's whatever they say is correct reading. That's what they read. Uh, you have layers in there though. So I divide them into like two categories. You have Negroes, you have lost souls, and then for us there are warriors. Lost souls kind of like walk around on eggshells. They don't want any attention relative to being African that is going to make them feel insecure in this world. So it's like for someone who's lost soul, just give me my widescreen, give me a car that's running good, give me a good job. Don't give me any of that political stuff. I don't want to hear anything about what's going on in Africa. Don't disturb me. I remember a guy walking by. I was doing a book signing, and the guy walked by, and I thought he was going to break his neck the way he turned his head so quickly away from the table. And it wasn't close enough to read any of the titles, but he could see the cover pictures. Negroes are a whole nother level of that. Negroes actively work to hurt you in service to Europeans. They actively do things that will cripple you, that will cripple the community. They work very hard to assist Europeans and other folks, Arabs, Asians, what have you, to take out resources from our community. So when I say Negro, it's like the worst of us. All of these fall into the category of menticidal. It's not that you don't have a mind. It's like someone scooped out everything that was African and replaced it not with just them, but with you the way they want to see you. We often forget that in the definition. I see that in scholarship. People don't say anything about that part of the definition where they didn't just replace your mind. They replace your mind with their image of us, their perception of us, and that's how we see the world. That's what our worldview becomes. Their view of us, how they want us to see us. So they don't have to work anymore to make us be at the bottom. Carter G. Woodson, they don't have to make a back door. We'll find a way to do that on our own. So menticide is to me the most damaging. And the last point I would like to make on this, Kobe K.K. Cambone, he was one of our premier psychologists. He was the chair of the psychology department at Florida A&M for years, and he had a concept called cultural misorientation, which is very similar to menticide. But that means that you're looking to someone else's culture for your guidance, for who you should be, for what you should aspire for. But he made a point which at first I moved back from, and then I thought about it. He said all of us are menticidal, culturally misorientated to some degree. Because I thought, I'm above that, I'm beyond that, But socialization is so deep, and everybody is socialized. Socialization is so deep that everything that you know and think is connected to that worldview, to that priority. And I got reminded because I'm walking through, I believe it was a Walmart or Kmart. It was around Christmas time. And I'm, of course, far away from their holidays and all the rest of this. And I stopped in the middle of the aisle because in my head, I'm humming one of the Christmas songs that's coming through the loudspeaker. And I would have assumed that, oh, no, I would never do anything like that. So, and that brought back that idea. Menticide it's really deep. And it's not something that we should be angry about in terms of people who are menticidal,
right?
Because in most cases, they have no idea. They don't know. The problem is the fighting against anything that would allow you to learn, what it is.
Yeah, it's we got the media, we got movies. Music, as you were saying, it's it's almost like the three-headed monster, that we're fighting against.
Baba, so family, menticide is the system's way of making you forget your name and your power. They flood your mind with lies, erase your ancestors from your textbooks, and tell you what African-centered living is too much. But, Baba Rudy, I refuse to get or be reshaped. I choose to remember. Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe.
You
that refusal, Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
No, I was just gonna say that it sounds like you don't play today. You're not playing today. You don't play while you work.
Now it's not time to play.
It is not the time to play.
It's not.
No. Apologies, Baba. You was going to say?
Oh, no problem. And that refusal is what's important. But what I will say, and you have a lot more energy now than you're going to have when you're 30. You have much more than you're going to have when you're 40. But as time goes on, and I understand I went through that, I don't want to call it a phase, that period in my life where it was just the problem was so large. I had things to do. I needed help to solve this problem. It's just work, 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 work. You have to find time, be it not just meditation. You have to find time every once in a while to get away because it will become so overwhelming and that taxes your system. And of course, anybody who knows me knows I'm not saying stop doing the work, stop being a warrior. That's absolutely not. But as you get older, it's going to impact on you. I have stories of people who have dedicated their lives, who I've known, and they're no longer here because the stress, the perfectionism, having to end up doing everything yourself because you want it to be perfect and you believe that you're the only one who can do it. I'll give you one example. There's a brother in England who was in charge of an organization, and he invited me over to speak, and I went over. And when I arrived at their house, there's a blood pressure machine sitting in the middle of the dining room table, and you could see worry on his wife's face. He would not allow the younger people to do the most of the work because he wanted it done a particular way, and he didn't think that they could do it. That caught up with him. So he was walking right there. He had to check his blood pressure 3 times a day. So he wore himself out. So I guess I had 2 things. Number one, find you time. Enia and I, once every 3, 4, 5 months, we will go and find a hotel somewhere, in the Atlanta metro area or out of state. We'll stay there for a weekend. We don't take any work. And we get away for a minute because you need that. We started that because Baba Hannibal Afrique was one of our most refusing warriors, refusing elders. He wasn't playing. He had a camp where you learned survival. He had a school. He was a retired teacher from Chicago. He lectured everywhere. He wrote. He did everything for us. And in fact, I dedicated Center to him. But he and his wife were having issues because Barbara Hannibal just works. And she didn't work like that. That was not her thing. So he was upset because she wasn't doing the work that she needed to do in his mind. So she suggested that they go to the elders. The elders said, find a hotel, find a room, get away. And of course, he didn't want to at first because, I can't do that because I have this appointment. I have to do that. I have to do that. I have to be on the air. I have to do this. So, but he in the end decided to go. And they got to the hotel and they're in the room and she's unpacking the stuff and hanging it on the hangers. And he's opened up his suitcase and she turned around and looked and he's pulling paperwork out of his suitcase. So she said, oh, no, we're not going to do this. And she finally got him to quit and put it back in his suitcase and, all the rest of that. And he said that was one of the best days or weekends in his life. He said, because I was able to forget. So don't become so involved that you can't have time to breathe. Okay. Because a person like you is going to see the larger picture and the problems are going to be massive. And your heart is going to drive you to solve these problems. But you're still alive. You can't help anybody till you help yourself. You're still, alive. You have to find time to just, get away, get to the water, sit on the beach, sit by the side of the stream, go up a mountain. Get away. I would say maybe, and I'm not, a specialist. I'm not a therapist or anything like that. And I don't think you need a therapist. But I would say probably 1/100th of your time per year needs to be spent away.
Sometimes
so for
you
us,
need to vacate.
yes. My wife is always on my case. And when she gets on my case enough, I'll slow down I say, okay, well, I'm taking tomorrow off. And I'll take the day off and I don't do anything that day. I might read something I want to read or, play around in the yard or drive around or what have you, but I get away. Of course, at the end of that day, my mind is itching to get back to the work, but that day off has done something. It has invigorated me. It has energized me in a way. So don't forget to take care of yourself.
Baba, when we talk about systems or liberation, we have to talk about the foundation of it. Because I've come to know what a foundation, everything we build will collapse. And in your work, that foundation is Iwa, a warrior's character. Not just behavior, nor personality, but the spiritual order that oversees how we walk, how we speak, and how we build. So for families listening, especially those new to African-Centered living, this word might be unfamiliar. So Baba, will you please break down what Iwa means and why Iwa is important for African people?
Okay. And it's all about character. I need to remember to talk about that as part of this answer. Iwa is a shortened version, abridged version of Iwa Pwele. When I was writing the book, and it's a book about character, but when I was writing the book, I didn't want to use Iwa Pwele because readers, particularly young readers, when you give them one word that maybe they're not familiar with, is different than you having two words, they'll get lost. They'll leave it. They won't, go and look at it. So I asked one of the elders, one of our elder sisters, who is she's been studying Yoruba for I don't know how many decades. But I asked her, was it okay to shorten it to just Iwa? And she said, yes, it's okay, as long as you explain the bridge. But it means, in its simplest terms, it means good character, being of good character. And we have to be careful with that because in this society, in the Europeans' world, contradictions are at the heart and soul of everything. So if you pretend that you have a good character, or people think that you have a good character, even though you have a bad character, even though you act in bad ways, you're considered to still have a good character. So you can be contradictory. So you can beat up on people regularly, but as long as when you're giving your lecture, what have you, you're saying it eloquently, you're saying it well, you're impressing people, that doesn't matter. In our tradition, if what you said didn't match what you thought and it didn't match what you did, then you were a bad character. You were a contradiction. And in this society, because of the way we've been socialized, that doesn't make sense to us. We think that you can, as long as the image is good, then you're good. So, okay, what led to the writing of the book? Real quick. In Atlanta, there's a very large Black conscious community. It's supposed to be like the Black Mecca, but there's a lot of contradiction within that community. I mean, a lot. We begin to separate ourselves from that because we wanted to be seen as people of good character through what we did and said. So we begin to say centered versus conscious because conscious was including a lot of things that we didn't consider to be African. And that led me to write the book Iwa because I'm looking around at, and this is kind of a short story. I'm sitting in my house, some young folks, they were maybe 14, 15, 16. There were about 7 of them. They came to the house, which is very unusual, to talk to me. I said, that was very unusual. And they came to complain. They said, these elders in our community, they're not elders, they're elders. They don't listen to what we have to say. They're not concerned with our thoughts, our opinion. They disrespect us, blah, 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 blah. So I said, okay, well, I'll find out what's going on. So I went and talked to some elders, and they said the exact same thing about the young folk. I said, this is an issue of character. Either we have learned what good character is, because all these people had read, Lucia, they had read Karenga, they had read all of these books on who we are and the kind of people we're supposed to be. What So I said either they read it and they forgot or they never heard it. So that made me write Iwa, because it's a collection of thoughts, a collection of rules, guidelines on what good character means to us, what Iwa means to us. So no one, I'm like, I don't want anyone who has read anything that I've written or heard anything that I said to be able to say, oh, I didn't know. So it's there for folks to know what good character means if you are calling yourself African.
Facts.
Yeah. Laverucci, I know Iwa means a warrior's character, but for the family that's trying to fully understand what it truly means, I'm wondering, is character just about how we act, or is it even deeper than that? Like, is it about who we are watching when nobody's watching?
Absolutely. And that's it in a nutshell. We know spirit is always there. Spirit doesn't go anywhere. So like folks, acting crazy for 6 days in a week, and then they'll go to church and everything is fine after that. No, you've been doing what you weren't supposed to do. You know it. It's you studying you. It's you making sure that you follow the guidelines. It's making sure that you're the kind of person who is of good character, who's doing the right thing. It's you following my eye, you being truthful, justice, all of that. That's being a good character, trying your best. Of course, we're human. Of course, we're going to make mistakes. But the vast majority of what you think, because what you say, that's supposed to be good. I often referred about Hannibal again. He simply said, if what you do helps, helps African people, then it's good. If what you do doesn't help African people, then it's bad. But that has to come from the heart. And like you said, at the end of your point is how you're judging you, how you see you at the end of the day. What did you do? In sociology, there's this concept called impression management. And it is the idea that we act toward other people in a way to control how they see us. So we have a lot of people out here who are acting in good character when they're in front of people because they want people to see them as being people of good character. But if you looked at their personal private life, then you're looking at bad character or something in between there. So yes, it is a personal judgment, and only you can judge.
Ashe. Bob Rudy, we hear the word centered a lot in African spaces.
Okay.
And this is more so for the family. But I've come to know from the teaching of my Nana Mu and Barbara Asar on what being African-centered and what it means. And they thought it would benefit me more to follow up my question with you. And family, for clarity, I'm not talking about Reya'Sekhmet or Reya'Sekhmet, but I'm talking about those who may be confused on the subject. As I've come to know, being African-centered means I don't just have to say I'm African. I think it, I live like it, and I protect it. It's not just about learning history. It's about being locked in with my ancestors, like really locked in. Baba Rudy, my question is, will you define African-centeredness, and will you break down what does it really mean when it comes to being African-centered?
To me, I'll say again, character. When I study our ancestors, of course, when we say African-centered, we're centered in the rules, the guidelines, the behavior, the thought, the creations of African people. Okay, we centered means the center, and our center is supposed to be our ancestors. Our center is supposed to be the wisdom that came from them. They gave us the guidelines. The guidelines have been compromised living in someone else's space, having to follow their rules. But they gave us the guidelines. We have to go back and get those guidelines to get that understanding as to why. Okay, we have to understand why you could have something like communalism. Communalism requires a level of trust. To have a communal space, to be a real community, that means that you can't have people in there who are lying. How are you going to develop trust or have trust when you're lying to me all the time? So you have to understand the mentality of a people, the mind of a people whose their basic form of living was communal. Okay, we don't really understand what the word communal means. We think about community, all the rest of that, but when we say centered in who we are, that means that we're talking about we are trying to be African. Asa Hilliard, remember Ani, they always use those two words together. Be African. What does that mean? That means not only do I dress within this context as African. There's something about me, particularly other centered people can tell. Okay, yeah, he's clear. But it's also the way you say what you say, the organizations that you are involved in, what you eat, what you drink, where you go, where you consider to be home, who you consider to be friends, who you consider to be enemies. All of that should be centered in who we are as a people. And that means that our source, we say return to the source, our source is us. Our source isn't them. That doesn't mean that we don't understand them. And that's not to try to water it down. No, our center is our ancestors. If we're our ancestors, then, in order for us to know who we are, we have to be them. Other people do the same thing. And we often forget if a people rises to power, they don't throw away their traditions. They don't run away from their traditions. They hold those traditions to their chest. We're the only people on the planet who have done everything in our power to get as far away from who we are as possible. No one else does that. Right. No one else does that.
I've come to know when you're centered, you don't get pulled in every direction. You don't chase trends or copy confusion. Baba Rudy, what do you say to the young listeners? And bear with me, Baba, as I said on my question. But what do you say to the listeners that struggles with being pulled in a million directions, like school, social media, maybe even family? Because I see it even when we try to stay focused. There's always something trying to pull us off center. And Baba, sometimes it's not just outside the world. Sometimes it's the people closest to us, like friends and family. So I'm asking, Baba, how do we stay centered when everything around us is designed to distract us?
When you're talking, I'm thinking about two men, and I think that young folks can relate to this. Both of them went into the military. One joined the military because he needed to feed his family, and that was the only option that he saw. And based upon the circumstances, I might agree. Another guy, he was in ROTC. So when he finished college, he had a contract with the military where he had to go in and serve for 4 years. Both of them asked me, in a way, what you just asked. They said, well, I'm going into the military. Barbara, you've been in the military. How do you stay, and at the time, of course, I wasn't, but how do you stay connected to who you are with all this military around me, gung-ho, red, white, and blue, how do you do it? I said, take your best books by us, hide them in your locker. If you live on base housing, keep them there. Don't let anyone else know that you have them, and read us for 1 hour a day. Read us for 1 hour a day, and then going about your business. Read us for 1 hour a day, every day, and you won't get lost. So to young folk, the same thing applies. In fact, I guess another example is important. We had a young man here who he was real rough, and when he came to Akoben, the peace that was here, it was hard for him to live with, because that wasn't what he was used to. Both his mom and dad were locked up for crack, all kinds of chaos in his life. And he would get so angry in class, sometimes he would start crying, those red hot, angry tears. So I take him out on the porch and we talk, and I would say, because he was very, very intelligent. And he knew in the world that he came from, you don't let anyone know. I said, okay, this is Aakhu'Ra. This is an African space. In here, you can put those defenses down. You can make all the A's that you want to. I won't tell anybody. You make all the A's you want, you can, be excellent. I said, but I understand when you step outside that door, you're in another world. You can pull your pants down to sag. You can do all the rest of the stuff that you have to do out here in order to feel like you're accepted. You can do all that craziness. But when you come into that space, so I guess that in a sense would be a general advice. Find you some time every day to do us, to be African in that room. Okay, read that particular book, or listen to this podcast, every day, and you will stay grounded, and it'll grow until you get to the point where you realize that stuff out there doesn't control you. You are power. So you can, at that point, you're independent. You can, be the kind of African that you want to be. You've studied all the rest of this. So I understand the confusion. I understand the fear. I encountered adults. There was a brother in England who was 72 years old who found his way.
Mm.
And everybody around him, his children, his grandchildren, he had retired from work, but all the people he knew at work, his neighbors are all like, what are you doing? What's this African stuff you're talking about? You're too old for this. But he continued to study and study and study every day. And he was able to stay sane, stay safe in his space. I know that it's hard.
Yeah.
I have large extended family, and I'm like, and any eyes like the same thing. But once you know who you are, once you have studied enough to really, really know who you are, then you're good. But a little bit every day, a little bit every day.
Yeah. And that, you know what, Baba, it's interesting you say that, and because it reminds me of Reya'Sekhmet. She doesn't do podcasting to be a podcast star or to be a social media star. She's at 6 years old. My divine reflection and I were watching a presentation. I think it might have been Dr. Ben or Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, or Dr. John Henry Clark. It was one of those two, and we were watching the presentation, and she was playing with her little cousins. Think about it. She's 6 years old, and she's always been able to read well, but she came and sat down between us, and she watched the entire presentation. And we were all, that had to be about 2 hours. And the thing that really blew our mind was she started reciting what she was hearing and presented it in a way that showed that she understood it. So we get a lot of people, I fast forward, we get a lot of people who want to leave comments or email us directly and think that she may be rehearsed or she may be being fed this information, but she's actually studying this stuff. She reads this and she processes it, and she came to us and said, Baba, I want to be able to share my knowledge in real time. Is that what you said?
Okay.
She wanted to share it with the world and with those who want to listen. So I just say all of that to say, she always asks us, do we ever get tired? And as much as I want to tell her, no, there are moments that we do find the weight of this, what we're up against, heavy. But like you said, sometimes we have to vacate,
and
get recentered and come back and get back and get back in this fight. But exactly. And so I just say all that.
Come back stronger.
Exactly. I say all that because it's a great segue into a question that I would like to ask. And Baba, that you often spoke on two paths: the path of being centered and the path of simply belonging to the conscious community. And you alluded on it earlier when you were breaking down the what separated African-centeredness from just being in the conscious community, and these feel like similar roads, African-centered conscious community, but we know, Reya'Sekhmet and I, we know that they're not the same. So Baba, please help the family that may not know or are struggling with understand what exactly separates being truly centered from just moving with the crowd of the conscious community, and what does it really take to stand firm in our core when so many of our brothers and sisters wear the labels, but few embody that discipline, clarity, and weight that centeredness actually demands.
I would be oversimplifying it. I would generalizing it in a way if I say, well, really the difference is between knowing and knowing and doing. Because my mother was a devout Christian, and she believed in giving, giving, giving. She was like that model of being Christ-like, where she had a box in the car of clothes. She'd come across someone who was homeless and go and open up the trunk and let them go. She always carried rolls of pennies in the glove compartment to give to people. And to me, that was like the perfect example, because you're supposed to be doing this, not just talking about it, not just looking pretty, but doing it. So when I look at folks in the quote unquote conscious community, for some of them, it is a defensive place where they can be safe as an African against the threat of Europeans. That's kind of hard to understand, except, well, back in the 60s and the 70s, you had Black student organizations on white campuses, and they were literally bottles being thrown at them out of windows while they're on campus, spit on, all the rest of this. So they closed ranks and created these Black student unions to protect themselves, which is what a lot of people in the college community are there for, if you will, for protection. What happened and what made me think about it was that as soon as white folks started saying, oh, well, come over here, we love you, we're sorry for what these people are doing to you, blah, 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 the Black student unions fell apart. So when I'm talking about the center community versus the conscious community, you're also talking about vision. You're talking about what you would do if we came to power right now. What would you create? What kind of society would you create? There would be different societies created. For African-centered people, you would create a sovereign nation, an empowered sovereign nation. That would mean that you declare war on everybody, but you would create a sovereign nation that gave itself directions, and those directions were based solely on the quality of the character of our ancestors. That's it. Conscious people, bring everybody in, and we're just going to create this new human world, forgetting about history, ignoring history, ignoring what has been done. I mean, the first tent cities were around Kemet when our ancestors realized what the Europeans were up to, and they didn't allow them in. But over many, many years, one became a friend, one got married, and then they did what they were originally designed to do, if you will, generations later. So they didn't forget, they didn't change. So for me, it started out with simply, there's a problem with character. I mean, we're Africans. You're not supposed to be lying to me. We're supposed to be conscious Africans. So you're lying to me. You're stealing from me. You're doing all these things to me. And you're sitting there with African and dashiki on, and you got the correct rings, and you're saying machi in the morning, and all these other things that on the surface gives the appearance of being African. Right. So in terms of being African, for the conscious community, you have this appearance. For the center community, you pretty much have the same appearance, but there's a heart in there. There is an African way in there that's in action. And we see it in Atlanta. We've been seeing it in Atlanta now for about 15 years. If you decide that you want to be of Ma'at, then you get ostracized from the conscious community. They don't say anything. They just don't communicate. They don't attend your events. You don't see them in the same spaces, because it's like, by you being of Ma'at, you being that kind of a person, it shows what they're not. It's sort of like I used to say, if you have a bunch of grown males in a room and some boys, and a man walks in, the boys are going to know the difference. They're going to know that's and automatically that's going to tell them, these aren't men. So you try to control the man and turn him into a grown male so that you all become quote unquote men. So it's a matter of first thinking. We say think, say, do. It's a matter of thinking, because you might have someone in the center community who has read less of our classics than someone in the conscious community. But the person who is centered, they'd applied that. That got me into not trouble, but it troubled me, where I still do, but most of the lectures now with people who already know. I used to tell people at the start of the lecture, I said, I want to know what you're going to do. I don't want you to answer me, but I want to know what you're going to do with what I said, with what I talk about. I don't want to hear, Baba Baruti, he told this good joke. Baba Baruti, he made that point. Baba Baruti talked about this guy. Yeah, we needed to hear about him, blah, blah, and just go from lecture to lecture to lecture to lecture and do nothing. If you're not taking what you're doing and applying it to the benefit of yourself, your family, African community, then that's consciousness. Centered person immediately while the lecture is going on, they're trying to figure out how to apply that in the program that they have or the program that they're getting ready to create, how they can apply that in terms of their complement or their children or their grandchildren or what have you. They're constantly trying to build. Conscious people use the word nation building, but you might as well take building off because they're not doing anything to build. And it's more than just people who believe that the revolution is a conversation. Yes, you have to talk, but there has to be this applied component of that. And you're studying so you learn how to do what you're doing better.
Father Baruti, as a young African girl becoming,
Yes.
I've been learning I speak with clarity. But sometimes it feels like our voices, the voices of youth, get drowned out. Not just by the outside world, but sometimes even within the village. So I want to ask, how can young people like me make sure our voices are heard without disrespecting our elders, but also without disappearing under the shadows and still be seen and taken seriously?
And that respect goes two ways. You young folks should not be disrespected by older folks, and older folks should not be disrespected by younger folks. It goes both ways. One of the things that I would say is that you all need to organize yourself around activities that pushes your ideas forward. You're of course all part. You said even in the village, yeah, even in the village. You all have to have your own podcast. You all have to have your own forms of communications, your own circles that does not in any way, shape, or fashion undermine, that does not bring things into the African center that shouldn't be brought into the center. Reminds me of, I can't think of her name now, sadly, the sister in the civil rights movement in the South who was part of SCLC and NAACP, and she fought for the young folk to have their own office, their own space, their own voice, and not to be told what to do by the older folks. A lot of times the work, responsibility, ear that you get is based upon your level of maturity. If there's an event and it's time to shut it down, and everything's been done, then the young folk ought to jump in there and help to fold up the chairs along with those folks, not by yourselves, but to demonstrate. Our voice needs to be heard. Our voice needs to be respected. We see responsibility and we take care of it. What are you doing? Okay. We did, as an example here, there was a big festival that we used to go to, and there would be vendors who were centered and vendors who were conscious. We had children who were in centered families. And we were talking about, the men were sitting around talking about security for our event tables at this event. And the boys were like in the room right across from us, but they weren't involved in the discussion. And I said, well, and there was a rites of passage program that they were involved in. I said, well, we need to involve them in this as well. So what we did was that we gave them the responsibility of being the eye for the men. So they could still play, they could still do whatever they wanted to do, but they were supposed to, out of the side of their face, be watching the tables where the center people were vending if they saw anything strange, dangerous, what have you, and then immediately let the men tell the men so they could do the work. That produced a level of maturity among these boys that I haven't seen anything else do, because they did that. And then the next year, that wasn't a discussion. They immediately, all of the events after that, and really to today, you see the boys keeping an eye on security, keeping an eye on what's going on, and telling on whatever they see that is wrong. So that's a small, there's a whole bunch of different areas that you all can be involved in. But I would say first and foremost, you have to find those in your community who have, let's say, an interest in being African, who are like you, who want to do this work, who want to help to correct what is wrong, to serve the community, just like adults. So you have to find, I would say two, small, you don't need large numbers, 2, 3 who are like you, who can do something together, who can help to create or expand this podcast to those interests. You have to, it's like you have to not just do the things, but you have to take the initiative to do it in such a way that you have to be respected. Your voice has to be heard. And it's not like, I want attention, let me speak. No, that will come if you're doing the right thing. It's sort of like your character. It precedes you. It's not something you talk about. I remember when I was a little bit older than you, and I came home. I found a hair right here on my chin, and I come home and I said, "Mom, yeah, look at this. I'm a man." And she smiled and she walked away because she knew that being a man was an act. It wasn't some words. It was what you did. So she knew full well I wasn't even close to being a man. But that's what I'm saying. You have to do things in such a way that people are impressed with you, I'll say, for your age.
Yeah.
Okay? So a lot of people who are listening to you, they're impressed with you for your age because they don't expect someone at your age to be that serious. You know, of course you play. Of course you have, quote unquote fun. But for you, this is part of your fun. Just like right now, this is fun for me. This is not work. This is fun. Also, young folk have to have the kind of patience that a lot of old folk don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's going to take a while sometimes for the old folks to see you or recognize you. Not that you need their recognition, but it's nice to have it. And when that occurs, then the doors are going to open for you to do things that before were reserved for adults. So yeah, I remember here the children at one of the Kebukas, the children did the libation, and they did a beautiful job. But that was because of their level of maturity.
Absolutely.
Because they worked at it. I hope that. I mean, I know that didn't give a full answer, even a partial, really answer to that question. But it's there are so many areas that young folk can come in and contribute to, and not like as a side or well, she helped. No, it's like you're doing it, but you have to demonstrate that you have the maturity to do it without being asked.
Absolutely. So, Baba, what I was thinking was we twist the corner and hold that one up and kind of dive in a little bit on the book you wrote, Homosexuality and the Effeminization of African Males. Yes. And you nearly wrote this about 2 decades ago.
Yes.
And it remains one of the most debated issues in our community. Mm-hmm. So for clarity, family, we do not agree with that behavior, nor do we accept that lifestyle as aligned with African-centered living. And so, Baba, we stand unapologetically with building, protecting the traditional African family rooted in divine order, clarity, and cultural integrity. And family, that's not hate, that's alignment. That's us choosing restoration, right, Baba, over confusion. And sovereignty over surrender. So Baba, what do you say to the family that may not know, or the ones that are hard-headed, lack of a better term, or to the ones who struggle with the concept, i.e., what we call those fence riders, because they have loved ones living that life or that behavior. So basically, Baba, how do we hold firm in our values and teach truth without folding under emotional pressure or fear of being misunderstood or canceled? I think that's the word that they use today.
Well, First, I'm going to say you have to know or believe or understand the logic behind what you just said. Okay, this is not us. It's not part of our tradition, and that was what started me writing the book. I was told that is this is us, that this has always been, and this is what we've always been. And I'm saying, and I didn't know at the time, but I knew it was. I felt it wasn't right. So that's what started the research. That book took 9 years to write. I wanted to make sure that when I was finished with it, that no one could come back and question. Now they could get upset and say, "Oh well, I believe this, and he doesn't know what he's talking about, et cetera, et cetera." But no one has been able to refute what was written in that book. And the other part of it was the part of understanding is if, in terms of effeminization, if you don't understand that we're at war, then you can't see the effeminization. There's no reason for it. You don't see it as a problem. But when you understand the war and that in wars, men are the primary combatants. There are, of course, women involved in different times and places. You had all women battalions, if you will, all women armies, if you will. But in our tradition, that's not something that's necessary. Everybody is involved in the war if there's a war against, you and your people. So everybody, even the children. But if you understand that we're at war, then you understand why. You understand why Black males are being effeminized. Because when you effeminize someone, you take away their ability to think in fighting terms. You take away their ability to think in defensive terms. You take away their ability to see their role as being a defender of the family and the community. It's not even a thought that occurs because you're trying to find a way to attract a man, or you're trying to find a way to get away from any kind of work that may dirty your fingernails or break one. So that mentality, if you don't understand we're at war, but also if you really understanding for a lot of people would require a little study. And I tried to put everything related to that in that book that I was aware of. But it's going to require a little study because you have to understand how pervasive that is in their lives, how this is what I call proto-European, because they want to say the Greeks and the Romans weren't Europeans. They were their ancestors. They came from that. So when we look at what they were, and we understand why Europeans are what they are at heart, it's always been a part of who they are. But then again, you also have to study African culture because you don't find it there. And that, of course, is the heart of the issue, in the sense that it's because a lot of people don't read, because a lot of people don't study, because a lot of people base their truth, what they believe, what they say, on what they believe or who's the most articulate in explaining it. I'm sure everyone here knows that you have a lot of lying going on online. You have a lot of fabrication online. You have a lot of people who are talking about things they have no idea what they're talking about. But because they're good at talking about it, and because you have people who are running away, I call it escapism. Most of us are running away from anything having to do with being African. We'll find something that allows us to still be Black, but at the same time allows us to be European. So we don't want to argue against anyone. This is such a hard thing to say or to describe in this short period of time, which I know you know. We believe that there are those of us who I say are vanquished. Vanquished means that you have lost the war, you've lost the battle, and you believe that you should have lost because you believe that your enemy is superior, is better than you, is stronger than you. So when you're in that society with them, the society that they made, in order for you to be powerful and you see them as powerful and you as not as powerful, then you want to do everything that they do because you connect their power to everything that they are. So whatever it is that they do, you have to define it in such a term that it's you, that is part of you, that you need to do this, that you need to be that. And if this is what you are, If this is what they are, then this becomes what you are. I want to give just one quick example. When Enia and I were in grad school, and we were the oldest Black grad students at the University of Chicago at this time. All the other Black students knew who we were. We just didn't know who they were because it's like less than 1/4 of 1% of the students in grad school, University of Chicago, are Black. So you know who everybody is. Every year they have what's called a colloquium, and that's like a wine and cheese dinner type thing where the Black students. This was a Black colloquium. And all the Black students come together and meet each other and dress up, shirt, tie, all the rest of that, meet each other. So we hadn't been to one ever. And I believe this was like our 8th year at University of Chicago. So we went. We said, we need to get out. Let's go do something. So we went to this and we walked in. And what we saw was all of the men were on one side of the room and all the women were on the other side of the room. And I'm saying, wow, this is unusual. So she went to talk to the men. I went to talk to the women, and I asked, I said, I hope I'm not offending anyone, but why are you all in here like, children at a elementary school dance? The boys over here, the girls over here, everybody's afraid to ask each other to dance. And one of the sisters, and she was not directing the comment toward me, and I was not offended. She said, "What men?" And I said, "Okay, let me take my leave." And interestingly, Eni and I, we crossed each other going back and forth. So I went over to the guys and I said, how's it going? What's going on, fellas? Hi, how you doing? It's all good. I was upset. I went back to Eni. She knew what was going on. We immediately left. I went home. And I said to the brother who was also in the graduate program with me, who's down in the hall, I said, what's going on with all these homos? And he said, they're not homosexual. He said, they may be, but they're not homosexual. He said, they've been effeminized. He said, in this environment where white males rule, Black men are automatically a threat. Wow. It has to do with our voices, our postures, all the rest of it. So they know that in order to get into those circles, they must appear non-threatening. So they have trained themselves. Some of them parents have trained themselves since they were small to speak and act in a way that was not offensive, that did not scare other white males. Mm-hmm. So that's a teeny tiny part of the process. All of these things, coming together, moving away from being us and becoming more like them. When you're trying to integrate, you're always trying to integrate into something that's better. You think that it's better. You want to become part of something better. I don't know anyone who's trying to integrate into something that's less than them or worse. So you're trying to become them. And when you see all of them as being the source of their power, then you automatically going to assume, well, I need to act like them. I need to speak like them. I need to have behaviors like them. I need to have aspirations like them. I need to want to drive what they drive and live where they live. And this is all over this country, into Canada. It's been globalized.
It's a sick society.
Ashe.
Yes, absolutely. And when okay, yes. Ani.
It's time for a question from the segment zone.
Only for the sake of time, right?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
This is where I will ask you a fun question, something to help stretch the imagination.
Okay.
Because kids can ask questions that make grown-ups rethink their whole life. Because I want to name 2 of the many ancestors I walk with today, Harriet Tubman and Fannie Lou Hamer. Okay. I named them to honor their strength and wisdom they bring to set the tone for this question. I walk with the ancestor Harriet Tubman because she didn't just escape, she returned. She risked everything for her people. She moved in silence, but her impact was strong. She taught us that freedom isn't a destination, it's a duty, and she didn't wait for permission to be divine. I also walk with the ancestor Fannie Lou Hamer because her voice was a weapon.
She's your favorite?
Yes.
One of your favorites?
Yeah.
Yeah, you love all the ancestors.
She's one of my favorites.
One of your favorites.
Yeah. She spoke truth to power, to where she made systems tremble. She reminded us that being sick and tired of being sick and tired wasn't weakness, it was clarity. She didn't ask to be liked, she demanded to be heard. And Baba, she said there's no need of running or saying you're not going to get in the mess. Because if you're born with a black face in this country, you are already in the mess.
Mhm.
So you can pray until you fame, but God is not going to put it in your lap.
Say it one more time.
God is not going to put it in your lap.
Say it one more time for the family way in the back.
There we go.
God is not going to put it in your lap.
Absolutely.
I say that, Bob, because with both of them beside me, I'm ready to ask my question. Okay. So, Bob, all right. So, Bob Baruti, if the ancestors gave you a spiritual walkie-talkie, one that only activates when the village is in danger, and you could call on 2 ancestor warriors to help you restore order, who would you call, and what would you say to them to let them know it's time? Bob, the floor is yours.
Wow. To pick 2, I'm going to steal one of yours. I'm gonna steal Fannie Lou Hamer. She's my favorite because of, I mean, when you have nothing in a materialistic world, but your voice is so strong, so powerful, so clear, so truthful that your folks listen to you and they move on what you say and what you're saying is righteous. She was bad. I remember the statement that she made. No, that wasn't Ida B. Wells. That was her, who said, it's like a shotgun in every room. If he comes in, he's not going to see his mom anymore.
Mm.
In terms of the ancestors, that's a really hard one. In a sense, it's easy because Malcolm, not Malcolm. That's immediately. It's still a hard one. And I would choose him because for me, it was like a similarity in our lives. And this is a man of good character. No one ever they tried to turn him into a homosexual. They tried a number of things.
Mm-hmm.
But Malcolm was of the kind of character that I wish I was. He was a man. He was an absolute man.
Mm-hmm.
But I would ask them, and that would be part of me saying something. I would ask them to look around now and to see if they see anything that has really changed in a substantial way for us as a people globally. I would ask them, look at England, look at Australia, look in Brazil, look in Canada, and tell me if you see where our situation has improved in any way, because I think that it has become worse in multiple ways. Sophistication, technology, all the rest of that has made it appear different, but Mentacide has increased. Our relative resources and wealth has increased. Well, it is decreased relative to other people's. So I would ask them to look around to see if they see what I see, and if they agree that our time is running out, and it's running out fast, and things have to be done now to correct that. I would also ask them, what is it that they would want me to say? What message would they want me to deliver, or how would they modify or improve on how I was saying it to get the lesson across clear? Because on the regular, I think about Malcolm X saying, "Make it plain," and that's been the hardest thing in my life, because when you're I'll say at the level I was in terms of grad school and writing, 95% of your people will not understand what you're saying if they read your work. So making it clear is the hardest thing for me to do. Make it plain. Yeah. And I would, that would really be questions for them.
Absolutely.
Bob Baruti, I heard folks say reclaiming your name is like planting a flag, and I'm definitely interested in your name. Will you share with the family about a unique name and what it means, or what it means to you, and how the name Mwalimu Baruti came to be?
Okay. And Mwalimu is a title. It's not really a name. It's a title. And I took it because of a very brilliant sister who was in my department at Morehouse, and she was treated very badly. But she was brilliant. She had connections in Brazil. She had created an organization. that Morehouse took from her. And she still stood like Fannie Lou Hamer did when stuff was taken from her. I thought she didn't like me. And I thought she didn't like me mainly was because she was a seasoned faculty. And when I came, they made her share her office with me. They didn't do that to anybody else. They were trying to punish her for something. So, and she didn't really talk a lot. So I really thought that she didn't like me. So I kept my distance. And I'm walking down the hall. I remember, I can see that day right now. I can see that hallway right now. I can see her coming. She walked by me and she said, Mwalimu, and kept right on going. And I didn't know what that meant. I'd run across it in the Koto's book, but I really didn't, I don't think I understood the depth of what it was. And for her to say that was like one of the highest compliments I've received in my life. Because like I said, she was brilliant. That was one of the reasons why they were afraid of her. And I took that seriously. When we left Morehouse, she supported us for years. That, okay. So Mwalimu is like is a title. It's some people think it's a first name, but it's a title. Baruti, when we were looking for names and we refused to pay our enslavers to have them officially changed, and it hasn't worked against us. The bank, of course, they'll accept a check from Mwalimu Baruti or Larry Crawford because that's money for them. But we took Baruti because Baruti means teacher. And we are a family of teachers. Even our daughters, when she was your age, she was assisting at a school that was like a block away with the littlest children. And she's been doing it ever since. K is for Kwabena, which is day name from the Akan, which means born on Tuesday. Bomani means warrior. So I kind of translate that as a warrior scholar who teaches warrior scholars.
Warrior scholars who teaches warrior scholars. Say it one more time.
I say warrior scholar who teaches warrior scholars.
What time?
For the family way in the back.
Okay, a warrior scholar who teaches warrior scholars.
There it is.
Yeah,
Ashe.
Bob Baruti,
yes.
As we close out on today's discussion, we've given you the African village so much, books, lectures, and trainings, and so much more. And here we are in the back half of 2025. Baba, across all your works, teachings, and years of building, how far have we come? How much further do we still need to go? And have we in some ways done more harm than good by delaying, compromising, and or confusing our mission?
No, I wanna transition knowing that I've done my best work for African people. My measuring rod is when I'm thinking about a board of elders, once I've transitioned, judging me based upon what I've done. And in what I've done, what I want them to see or what I want them to agree with is that I didn't compromise. That was one of my fears when I began to walk in this path, because I saw a lot of older folks who, once they got older, they started to compromise. And I said, that scared me. I said, don't let that happen to me. So I fought very, very hard against that. We don't have a lot of time, but nothing is impossible. That's, we're genius. We're all powerful. We are right and righteous. So spirit is on our side, period. We just have to do the work. Spirit's job is to assist, not to do the work for us. The job is to assist. I don't care if it gets down to 10 of us. If you're right, then you do what you're supposed to do. I don't care if nobody's listening to me. I don't care if nobody buys another book or reads another book or studies another book that I've written. I really don't care. My job is to deliver the word. There's an African proverb that says, issue the warning, some will survive. My job is to issue the warning and, like I said back in the day, and keep on trucking. So to me, it's like in the hands of the young warriors like you who we'll call warriors in training, because you're not a full-fledged warrior yet, but you're on the way, you're on the path, you're being directed, guided, trained to be that. I'm here for you all for whatever you need to improve upon the quality of your battle. Okay? Because I don't believe that African people can be defeated. I don't believe that if spirit allows, I put it in these, if spirit allows Europeans to control the world forever, Asians to control the world forever, Arabs to control the world forever, and for us to be destroyed, then something's wrong with my conception of spirit. Something's really wrong there, because that would mean that spirit is in support of evil and not in support of good. So even though time is short, and I would tell folks also all the time, you don't determine time. This war hasn't stopped. It may take another 100 years. It may take another 200 years. But as long as we are moving in that direction, setting the examples that we need to set, doing the work, being righteous, honoring, loving our ancestors, honoring and loving African people who want to be African, then we're good. We're good. That's not a worry of mine. That's not a concern of mine that we're going to lose, because I don't believe we can lose.
Ashe.
Absolutely.
Baba Bertie, we want to ask about Yurugu by Nana Marimba Ani and Sister Nana Ani. But it's a book I haven't read yet, and I believe Barbara I just added it to the Institute's library. But I've heard you mention Yurugu many times in your interviews and teachings. I know it's not just a word, it's a worldview. But Baba, I'm still learning, and I want to make sure I'm standing with clarity and not just compassion. So will you help me understand what Yurugu actually means? And why is the book so important with understanding the war against African thought, especially for those who are just beginning to see how deep the attack really goes?
And I know you asked me about the word Yurugu, but I want to say real quick, everybody needs to have a copy of that in their home. It's not an easy book to read. I started out and I read, I guess, about page 114 something, and I put it down. I took a summer off from teaching college. Dictionary philosophy, all kinds of tools, index cards, highlighters, pens. And I spent a good part of that summer studying this book. And I told my room when I first met her, I said, it's like my lens were adjusted to reading this book. What she does is to explain the European mind, how Europeans think, how they approach life, their worldview, how they see the world, how they see divinity. She explains them. And in the social science, it's important to understand that you are the social scientists, and you are social scientists, but we're trained to study the problem. Social scientists are trained to study the problem, but we're always the ones that are studying. Mama Rimba is a social scientist who studies them. And she uses the term Yurugu because it's from a myth. And Yurugu essentially is characterized in that myth is evil because the human side of it is missing. Any of that you see is superficial. It's an act. It's a pretense to get an advantage. So really, we need to have as many words as we can for whatever we're talking about on the front line. Warriors need to have a whole bunch of words for warrior. We need to have a whole bunch of words for Europeans. The more we have, then the more it can be understood. So you say, cracker, au fait, European, pale face, whatever. All those things are definitions within themselves. I like using the term Yurugu mainly because of that book, because it explains them, but also because it connects them to a mind that is spiritual. I know we say despiritualized when we're talking about them, but everything is spirit. And what they have collected, their mind, their consciousness, their way of thinking also needs to be understood. It's not just the colorlessness of their skin. It's a mind. It is a spirit. It is a force that is at work. And by saying the word Yurugu, it all includes all of them. It also helps us to understand that they are one. It's not just a bunch of individuals and these few bad apples do all the bad stuff and everybody else is good. No, this is one people.
Mm-hmm.
They benefited from what they have done. All of them benefited in one way or the other. So I also like it because it's you have you have words that just sound right. I can't, as an African person, I can't say we like the beat, we like the feel of it, we like the bass, no, I like the way that word, to me, it's like the word death.
Mm-hmm.
Hear that word death, it feels a particular way. So Yurugu to me feels like death along with a number of other words. It feels like that. It feels like a word that's describing evil, ugliness, death, bad stuff. So and warriors. So now you have a term that describes so much, that makes so much understand. Sovereignty is just a word. No, it describes all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So many qualities, so many variables. It describes a whole bunch of that one little word. Yurugu does the same thing for me. Exactly the same thing for me. Everything from caveman to, all of it. Everything. It describes them for me.
Absolutely.
Family, African people are just people of the circle, and that the center holds the most sacred, our elders and our children. So if we are scattered, we're vulnerable, but if we build and protect our circle, we become like the human body, where the brain and heart are protected by bone, because they matter too, and they matter the most. We, the youth, are part of the circle, or the center. We are not ornament. We are origins. We are necessary. And I've started to see the circle everywhere, not just in a diagram or traditions, but in how we move, how to protect, and how to transmit. I'm learning that being in the center isn't about just being safe. It's about being sacred. It means we carry the future, but we also carry the responsibility to remember, to listen, and to build. The center is in good hands because we understand its value, and we're ready to guard it with clarity, with character, and with commitment. Holding firm in our values isn't about attacking people, but more so, it's about practicing and protecting the village and speaking truth and not staying silent while confusion spreads. I see now, Baba, that being African-centered means standing in my clarity, even when it's uncomfortable. So again, I'm not backing down. I'm learning to speak with order and to stay rooted in truth.
So, Baba, is there anything that we didn't touch on today that you would like to talk about? And is there anything coming up for you in the future that the family should know about? Speaking engagement, community practices, stuff like that?
Two things. One, my most favorite lecture of the year, the hardest book for me to write, the book that should be in everybody's home because we don't know really the conditions under which we got here, the Kebuka lecture. I forget what year it's in, but for me, that's the most important lecture that I do every year, period. And that is on November the 15th or 16th, whatever that. Yeah, November the 15th, which is a Saturday. That was the hardest book for me to write. When, I know we've run out of time, but when I wrote that book, the day that it went to the printers, my nervous system went out. I was in the emergency room in the hospital. I couldn't use my legs. I laid across a coffee table with a pillow on top of it for over a month. Almost got completely addicted to oxycodone. Everything there. I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. Everything was extremely painful. I was out of the class here at Akoben for 3 months. When I got to the point where I would be on oxycodone, I could crawl. I couldn't walk, and then I was on a cane for quite a while after that. So there was a connection between the energy. And one of the elder sisters said, they assisted you to write this, and then they let you go for you to learn how to walk again. That's the most painful book because anybody who writes knows you have to reread what you wrote 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 times in order for it to be the kind of smoothness that you need it to be. So I'm going through this experience over and over and over and over and over again. I was going to write a book about our enslavement here, but once I wrote that, I said I'm never going to write anything like that. That was way too much pain. So it's going to be online and it's going to be live. The children love it. because they get to act out the positions that we were packed in on the ships. That's going to be, I said, November the 15th. And the
I'm sorry, I
other
didn't catch
thing,
that, Bob. You said,
nope,
but that was going to be online?
it's going to be online, and it's going to be online and in person.
Okay. We make sure we get our ticket.
Yeah, absolutely. I guarantee you love it. And this year, I've learned a lesson watching some of the elders who don't let stuff go, who don't pass it on, and then the organization dies or crumbles or becomes nothing. I decided I want Kebuka to be forever for us. So this year, last year was the last time I did the lecture entirely myself. This year, I'm bringing in, we're bringing in a sister who we know who's got the power, the energy. I'm going to do the first half. She's going to do the second half. Next year, she's going to be doing it. I'm going to be sitting in the audience enjoying myself. So that's one of the changes. Yeah. Last year was an historical event. This year is going to be an historical event, and next year will be an historical event as well. And also the second most favorite lecture is common sense security. So things that we knew when you and I were children, that we just saw people naturally do that didn't get passed down, that didn't get discussed. We got safe. We felt safe, so we didn't pass these things on. This is like a 3-hour lecture on those things, and it's always jam-packed. It's online only. Most of the audience is women, but we'll have audiences of 30, 40, 50 people, and that's unusual for me. And I go over a slide presentation. I talk about all the aspects of security, but this year also, that's going to be on December the 13th. Okay. We're adding something to that. The day after, there's a young man who I've come to know, and he is a survival security expert. Those folks who want to deal with that aspect or learn from that aspect, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in common sense security, he's going to be on we haven't decided yet, but he's going to be on doing a program on the 14th, the next day, on survival in your home, whether you can leave your home or you can get out and run or what have you.
Yeah,
so those
we don't
two
have
things,
time
November
in this
the
discussion.
15th. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, pardon me, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was to your point.
That's all right.
It led to a question. I was going to say, I know we don't have time in this discussion, but I wish that we could have talked a little bit about, and maybe, you will bless us down the road and be able to join us again, but to talk about that martial side, that security side of things, especially for those that is part of the commitment in the community on the west side of the Mississippi. We got to get you and Mama Ya on the west side of Mississippi.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
But
we love to come. Yeah, absolutely. That's no problem. That's not a problem for me. I really enjoy this, and like I said, I'm very impressed with this warrior in training.
Yeah. Do you how can one get a hold of you if they have questions or want to purchase your books? And also, do you have a way for the family to show their support, appreciation, and or donate in some way?
Absolutely. Well, we have a website which has all the books, my DVDs, has the Yurugu on there, has other folks' books as well, and it's www.akobenhouse.com, which in all of the books that you showed, it has on the ordering page in the back, it has the web address on there, or it should have the web address on there. If it's not on
Yep, it's on
page
there.
In the front.
We'll make sure we get that in the description.
So they can go there.
Video.
Yes.
Yep.
And there is on all of the flyers, where there is an accompanying flyer that has how to register on my page. It shows you where on PayPal or Cash App or the other one that has to do with the bank. That information is on all of those in terms of donations. Of course, this is our fundraising month. Now that you talk about, this is our fundraising month. So, we would love to have support from everybody in the community who is able.
Absolutely.
And yes, to come back on to talk about what have you, I'm good with that. We can, figure out when this can be done.
Much respect.
Much respect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Baruti, are there any current authors or scholars whose work you follow and find influential? And do you have any books or resources you would like to recommend to the family?
Wow. I will say of course, all of my books depend upon your interest in what you're trying to do. Identity and higher ground are very important. Centered, if you are trying to build a community, if you're trying to understand what that means, especially if you're trying to build a community, because Centered was written for folks who are trying to build centered communities. Identity and higher ground. Higher ground is really dealing with the spiritual aspect of being a warrior. Identity, I wrote that because we kind of like don't know who we are in a lot of ways. So I tried to explain in as many different ways and as many different levels what being African means. Of course, I'm going to recommend all of my books. If you're doing a rites of passage program, you want to start a rites of passage program, and rights fundamentals is involved. If you're thinking about being a warrior, what that means, and a Safo message to the warriors, those are important books for that. My wife's favorite is Complementarity and Complementarity Notes, because that talks about relationships and what the Complementarity and Complementarity Note. Well, Safo is the warriors, and there's a story that goes with, but we don't have time. But there's a story that goes with that artwork that's on the cover. The brother who did that artwork, he is a very, very serious warrior, very serious warrior.
Yeah, we have. There's still some books that elude us, but we are making our way through the collection.
Like my grandfather used to say, no rush.
Absolutely.
It'll come when it's supposed to come. And that's one of the lessons of my life. I'll be upset because I haven't read this book, which I've had for 5 or 6 years. When I read it, that's when I'm supposed to read it.
Ashe.
So, family, here's what we've learned. Every truth we heard was a seed, Asili, a seed of character, of clarity, and of courage. But seeds don't grow on their own. You gotta water them with ritual, protect them with discipline, and plant them with African soil, not European concrete. That means your learning has to match your living. And family, let's be clear. Yurugu is real, not a monster under the bed. But a mindset in the system, Yurugu is the lie that says African people are too emotional, too spiritual, and too broken to lead. Yurugu is the blueprint behind Mentacide, the reason why some of us think bleaching our skin is beauty and think English is intelligence. Mentacide is when Yurugu's voice gets louder than your grandmother's voice. It's when TikTok teaches you more about yourself than your own elders. But here's the truth. Yurugu can survive in the circle because the circle remembers, the circle restores, and the circle resists. So if you're listening, don't just reject Yurugu, replace it with clarity, culture, and with divine order. Ashe.
Ashe.
Now that you know a little more about Baba and Mwalimu Baruti, support Baba on all social media platforms, purchase his books. I'm going to his website today. So don't meet me there, beat me there.
Yeah, one more time.
Don't meet me there, beat me there.
One more time for the family way in the back.
Don't meet me there, beat me there.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Yeah, so don't take our word for none of this information, right?
Take our word for none of the information provided today.
What you gonna tell them to do?
Do your research.
One more time.
Do your research.
Ashe.
Baba Rudy, as we round out our discussion, I want to give you the final word.
I really want to just say be African. Be African in character.
To my elders, my peers, and the young listeners, I want to share what I've learned from asking Baba Baruti these questions. I asked about your voice because sometimes it feels like youth are whispering in the storm. We speak, but the wind of adult noise, outside pressure, and village tradition can drown us out. But Baba reminded me, truth spoken with order is never just noise, it's a signal. And when we speak from the center, we don't have to shout to be heard. And I'm learning that speak from the center means knowing who I am before I open my mouth. It means checking my intention, my alignment, and my responsibility to the village before I even formed the words. I used to think being heard was about being bold, but now I see it's about being rooted. So I've started practicing silence, not the kind that hides me, but the kind that prepares me. I listen to my elders, I study our history, and I ask myself, is what I'm about to say going to build the village or just echo the noise? That's the kind of voice I'm working on. And I want my Baruti to know some of us are on code. We're not just reacting, we're remembering. We're not just speaking, we're transmitting. The future is in good hands because we're not waiting to be grown to be responsible. We're choosing to be African-centered right now. Okay, so if you're around my age, here's what I want you to remember. And this is from me, Reya'Sekhmet with love. So family, they try to make us forget our names, forget our balance, forget our truth. They gave us Mentacide, which is mind poison. They told us being African was too much. They told us boys could be girls and girls could be boys. And that confusion was freedom. They told us to be quiet, to be soft, and to be safe. But that's not who we are. Come on, family. Today we talked about Iwa, a warrior's character, not just acting good, but being in line with our ancestors. We talk about Yurugu, the mindset that breaks down things apart and calls it progress. We talked about being African-centered on purpose, and every day we also talked about building mental sovereignty so that nobody else gets to our own minds. And family, I know some of us are just starting out, but starting from scratch every generation is not okay. We're not here to survive, we're here to restore. We're not here to be confused, we're here to be clear. So family, if you're a young warrior like me, just know you don't have to wait to be grown, to be righteous. You don't have to wait to be older, to be aligned. You can start right now because we're not just the future, we're the builders, and we build from the beginning. Again, this is from Reya'Sekhmet with love.
I am truly impressed with you, young lady. I really am. You know, this
Hold it the whole time.
is you are a true warrior in training, and we need millions more of you. So you keep doing what you're doing. Don't let anything, and I see that you don't, but don't let anything distract you from that, remove you from that path. It's narrow, but you need to continue to set that example. And we appreciate you.
Thank you. I say.
You're welcome.
Well, there you have it, family.
You know, do your best to be, period. Yeah.
There you have it, family. So that's absolutely don't forget like button and subscribe.
Study Baba Baruti's work and educate yourself, family.
Sacrifice and pay the price. A BF Hodie family. Reya'Sekhmet is out.
Bibi Fahodie.
Peace and love is the key. Ra represents the essence of truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, and germane trait, which is prosperity and righteousness. j-LifeMaat podcast. The j-LifeMaat podcast was created to give the family a place and platform to embrace their spiritual awakening and consciousness. j-LifeMaat is dedicated to showcasing the beauty of our culture, educating our people and those that want to learn this work. Smash that like button. Peace and love is Nikki.